Hello, and welcome to the presentation of my capstone project. Before I get started today, I would like to first take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the organization that I was able to do my internship with. I did my internship at Ada County Juvenile Probation, Juvenile Court, and Juvenile Clinical. The facility began in 1974. There was 71 beds in the detention facility that we currently have now. We currently have 3 courtrooms utilized by 2 full-time judges, one that we just lost not too long ago going to the downtown court. And we have 5.5 prosecutors, 1 victim witness coordinator, a certified service dog named Sandy, 4 public defenders, a criminal investigator, 40 probation officers, of which I am one, 20 clinical and programming staff, both working in our clinical facility and our detention facility. We also have 60 detention staff that work 24/7, 365 days a year to care for our juveniles that are in our detention facility. We have 20 support staff that work in our courts, such as our clerks that are admins and our front desks, as well as our marshals. And we serve on average of about 2,900 to 3,000 youths and family per year. At Ada County Juvenile Court, our vision is to be the foremost juvenile justice organization in the United States of America by proactively working to eliminate juvenile crime and to support and educate our community on juvenile justice. Our mission is to strengthen our community by providing professional services to enhance the lives of youth and their family, and our agency values our dedication, diversity, fairness, integrity, and trust. In 2015, law enforcement agencies arrested or referred 1,500 juveniles, and with those, it was 32 law violations that were allegedly committed in Ada County. So with 1,500 juveniles and 3,200 law violations, the average is 2.25 law violations per individual. Some come with just 1 and some come with more. On average, we have about 2.25 per individual as far as maybe a petty theft and a willful concealment, or a runaway and a beyond control, or maybe it's just simply a battery. We also have detention alternatives at our facility. We have WILD, which is work in lieu of detention. Our weekend detention program, where they stay from Saturday morning from 8 to 5. They go home and then come back again Sunday 8 to 5, which also as well has a family component. We also have electronic monitoring, which allows us to allow the juvenile to stay in the community and not necessarily be restricted to a home or a detention environment. We have in-home detention, which is a contract that is used between a probation officer, the individual, and the court. We also have conditional detention release orders. Those allow the juvenile to be released from detention with specific terms that the judge says you will remain in the community if you continue with these terms. If those terms are violated, they're brought back to detention. Research shows that the more involvement that a juvenile has in the juvenile justice system, the more likely they are to recidivate. So we try to use these detention alternatives as a way of keeping them out of the juvenile detention facility, thus them having less contact with the juvenile justice programs. We also have a unique program with our diversion program. So when a new charge comes in, an individual can be either petitioned to court with that new charge and go before the judge, or they can be allowed to be diverted into our diversion program. And that's a decision that is actually made by the prosecuting attorney. They get to decide if by the charges, maybe the not really having a whole lot of interaction with that juvenile, they'll maybe have a conversation with the school SRO, say, hey, tell us about this kid. Have you had any issues with them in your school? And allow them to go through a diversion process, which never puts them into the court system. They never have any charges filed against them. They also get the opportunity to work with a diversion officer instead of a probation officer. This in turn allows them to meet all of the three components that we find valuable, which are competency development, community protection, and accountability. That we can still address all three of those issues without the juvenile ever having to go before the court. This kind of gives them an opportunity to take care of what they owe back to the community and themselves without actually having to go in front of the judge and now have a juvenile record. We also make sure that we educate and teach our juveniles and their families about the court process. If you've ever been in court, there's a lot of acronyms that are used. There's a lot of words and terminology that are thrown around that aren't always necessarily very easy to understand. So we make sure that we address that with each family, and it's our job in the juvenile probation side to kind of play that case management piece and explain and make sure that they fully understand what's going on. We also work very closely with Victory Academy and BASE, which Victory Academy used to be our alternative school that is actually now going away, and we now have BASE, which is our Boise area school of education. Also, we work very, very closely with detention and clinical that make sure that we are all working to meet the best needs of a juvenile individual. So I'd like to tell you about the individual that I have chosen for my case study, for my capstone project. Her name is Noor. She is a female. She is 12 years old. A little bit about when we hear about Noor, we'll also be dealing with her family component as well, which consists of an 11-year-old sister, an 8-year-old brother, and both parents are in the home. The entire family is from Syria. They are Syrian refugees from Jordan. They have been in the United States less than 1 year, approximately 12 to 13 months. Mother couldn't actually find the exact date that they came to the U.S. I figured that would be a very prominent date in her mind, but it wasn't something that she recalled when I started working with them. They have very low socioeconomic status. Mother is not working. Mother does struggle with a few mental health issues of her own. Father works at a small market in one of the refugee ethnic groceries, and so he is not making a whole lot of money, not getting a whole lot of hours, and the number of services that they are offered as far as financial assistance usually only lasts about 18 months once you come into the United States using a refugee service. So there's a lot of stress in their family as far as what that's going to look like when they no longer have some of those services available, and that's something we'll touch upon a little later as well. Both of the girls that I referred to are attending school. The brother is actually being homeschooled. I don't really have an understanding as to why that is, but mom has never really asked that, and I've answered it, but she's not really answered. Both girls are doing very well in school, have absolutely no problems there. They're very excited to be at school. They really enjoy the atmosphere there. They have a lot of trauma in this family. Both girls have diagnoses of PTSD and trauma with psychosis. So we're dealing with a lot of high anxiety, a lot of issues, a lot of just culturally understanding the world around them. Same with mom and dad. Understanding the laws of the United States is very different from where they're from. The community supports that I work with this family is all members of the family, with the exclusion of dad, do have a personal CBRS worker. Each one of them is individual. Working with my partners with community mental health right now to really decide if that's really the best format for them to be going through, or would it be better if we utilized fewer CBRS workers, because that's a lot for us to really juggle and keep straight. We also have family preservation services within the home for this family. Mom and both girls are currently going to individual counseling. Then they also have the support of probation. A lot of times when things aren't getting done or things are getting kind of pushed to the side, if probation can step in, and it doesn't seem helpful to the family sometimes, but if we ask for it to be a court order, then things are required to get done, and we have a little more emphasis and leeway in order to make those changes and get those supports in place that a family may need. As you're following along with your PowerPoint presentation, there is a process of refugee screening video that will be shown right now, and you can go ahead and hit play on that and pause the video. As you come back from the video, you can look at the picture that we have on the Understanding Clients screen and where Syrian refugees have settled. And as you can see here in Idaho, we're kind of in that more 50 to 100 aspect. So there's a lot of refugees. We are very much a gateway city. And as you've seen from the video, it's not super easy to become a member of the United States to the refugee. You don't just get to go and just sign up to go. There's a lot of security. There's a lot of paperwork and red tape that a family has to go through, and they don't get to pick where they come. They also don't know how long they're going to sit in a camp and what happens in those camps. For this family, it was extremely traumatic. So let's get into the competencies. So for competency 1, demonstrating ethical and professional behavior, one of the big issues with working with Noor and her family was confidentiality. I needed to make sure that I built rapport with them and that they trusted me. They were in a new country. They had no idea what this court system was about. It was very unlike anything that they had ever been used to. So I made sure that when Noor and I had conversations, was very clear about the items that I was required to be a mandated reporter about, but I was also very clear that things that we talked about, unless they met those criteria, just like with her counselor, those were confidential items and that she and I could talk about those. Because of this, I would also share the same thing with Mom and making sure that she understood that. And that seemed to build some rapport. And the more we went on and the more things were done, it did seem to build a better relationship with me and the family. Timeliness was another component I felt of professional behavior. I was trying to set an example for the family that court was very important, meetings were very important, appointments, that you needed to be on time. And with this family, sometimes that was difficult because we were relying on transportation. So we always made sure to schedule out that they had enough time to get to their appointments. And in return, I always made sure that I was timely to my appointments with them. I didn't want to be running in at the last minute and expecting them to feel like that was okay, because then they would feel like that was okay with an appointment of theirs. That wouldn't necessarily always be the case. With this family, we partnered with a lot of community partners, and maintaining that professional appearance, maintaining respect, and working with other networks can sometimes be really frustrating, especially not understanding and not really having all the resources that I needed for this individual client. There were a lot of times that I would get frustrated, but I had to realize that those community members, they were my partners, and that I couldn't just vent or be frustrated with them. I just needed to realize that it was just kind of part of our system and the lack of our system that we have here in Idaho, and maintaining that professional relationship when I worked with them, I felt was very important with this particular client, because I was working with partners that I had never really worked with before. So having that first interaction with them was crucial. Social justice for this individual, just making sure that she understood what her human rights were, and making sure that she understood that she had the right to, she didn't necessarily like a counselor, because we did have that issue at one time. One of the counselors just did not work well with her, so we addressed that and we made sure that she got another one. That way she was able to have appropriate services while still maintaining, what she was ethically allowed to do. Education, that was more for me. I had a huge learning curve with this client. I had never worked with refugees before. I did not know all the dynamics and everything I was going to need. So in some of my continuing education for my license this year, I actually chose to sit in on a lot of refugee education type seminars and continuing education classes, because that was important for me to make sure that I had the tools and the information I need to better serve this particular client. Competency 2, engage in diversity and difference in practice. Like I said, I had never worked with refugees before. I had no idea the struggles and some of the hardships and just the confusion that they have. So the Idaho Office of Refugees was my saving grace. They were always there to answer my questions, and they helped me with engaging with interpreter services, Syrian interpreter services, which we don't have a lot of here in Boise. So making sure that when I knew I was going to be engaging with the family on legal issues, I made sure to call those interpreter services well in advance so that I could secure a legal interpreter, not just a standard interpreter, because I really wanted to make sure that the parents and the juveniles really understood what they were signing, what they were understanding. When they were working with an attorney, I wanted them to understand what a plea bargain meant. And many of us don't even understand that. So I made sure that for Noor, when an interpreter was needed with something that was very crucial and legal, which we dealt with a lot, that she had somebody that was very fluent in being able to explain these procedures and these policies of things that they're probably really appeared to not have any idea of how they worked. I also researched the culture in the community a lot. I spent a lot of time on just Google and going out and meeting with people and engaging in the Boise refugee services that we have and just asking questions. Not only that, I asked the family a lot of questions. For instance, I had no idea that with their religion, it was inappropriate for mother to be seen without her head covered by a man. And when I go into the home, I always bring another officer with me, and that's an officer safety issue for us. I had no idea until one time I noticed that she kind of clenched a little bit, and I had a conversation with her about that, and it was explained to me that if the person coming in with me, who she hadn't seen yet, was a man, she needed to quickly put her clothes on. And I had no idea that that was something. So just respecting her culture and making sure that I understood what maybe some common day things that I was doing would necessarily not be appropriate or interpreted as polite and possibly rude to her were extremely important for me to learn in order to build that rapport with Noor and her family. Other areas that I addressed are also just kind of getting to know the Boise Pride Foundation, the Basque Festival, and the LGBTQ community with working with other clients. Not so much with Noor, but those were also areas of huge diversity. I had never worked with any of those, and so to gain that knowledge, again, just to understand my clients in order to serve them better, to do that research and to ask those questions, I found was really crucial. Competency 3, advance human rights and social and economical environmental justice. With human rights, multi-gender identity and the needs for those assessments, Noor came to me I would say probably about 6 to 7 months after, and she had told me about a girl that she liked, and she wasn't sure if she should like boys or should like girls, and then we became extremely promiscuous in our community, and we've had to deal with that. So being able to deal with not necessarily that Noor needed that, but how would that impact her? If we had on our assessment sheets, how do you identify it as male or female? And, being 12 years old, she didn't know. She knew that she was supposed to marry a man if she still lived in Syria, but she also knew that there was a girl that she liked, like she should like a boy. So that was very confusing for her. So understanding that we are very black and white with our definition of what gender identity and what sexuality is in the juvenile level, and more of our juveniles are becoming much more educated, much more curious, and much more open with talking about that. And that was something that Noor had kind of opened the page of and got me to thinking, you're right, maybe we do need to look at what that looks like and how does that impact her and or the rest of our juveniles as we continue to grow and meet the needs of our clients. With economic justice, it was really important knowing that Noor had that family stress of very limited income, low socioeconomic status, with providing financial assistance packets to her and having it just understood that it was part of the process. It used to be a policy of ours that would say, if you need this, then fill it out. And a lot of times, if you do that to a family, they're like, well, I don't want to be the one that needs this. And I noticed that when interacting with Noor. Never did I see this family expecting anything to be taken care of for them or not expecting to have to financially pay for something. It was always just, how are we going to do this? And so I found that it was much more receptive by individuals, specifically Noor's family. If I just said, you fill this packet out, it's part of the process. I'll let you know what it comes back with once it's evaluated. Because when Nora's mom at first didn't want to fill it out. And then when I approached it that way, she filled it out, and a lot of their court fees were waived. And that was a huge financial burden for that family that was taken off their shoulders. In the social justice, processing paperwork in a timely fashion, 48 hours, that was my deadline. Kind of goes back to not only the social justice, but also the professional aspect of it as well. For instance, Nora needed funding for her mental health. If I did not process that paperwork in order for her to get funding, then maybe when she went to make the appointment, there was now a week out or 2 weeks out. For me to do my job and be diligent has a direct impact on how quickly that individual can get the services or what they need as far as what it is that I'm processing. So I was very diligent. Nor had a lot of things that we put in grants for. We petitioned to have, mental health covered. And that's a lot of paperwork, but it was also very important that it was done in a timely fashion. And that way she was not sitting there waiting for me to do my job in order for her to be able to get the services and the help that she needed. Competency 4, engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice. Law-related education. We utilize this a lot. It is evidence-based, and it goes out, and Noor's school was one of ours that we actually taught at. We actually go out into the middle schools of some elementary and middle schools of neighboring schools in the Treasure Valley, and we teach law-related education. We teach them on a very basic level what it means like to have interaction with law enforcement and how that impacts your future and how it impacts the goals that you have. And on a level that they can relate to, the hope is that later when a friend says, just steal the candy bar, I've done it before and nobody ever gets caught, they remember how many days in detention they can spend for that petty theft of stealing that candy bar. And this was very important because when Noor came in on an assault charge at one time, she remembered how many days that had, but kind of backfired because she also said, but he didn't get a battery because that's 180 days and an assault's only 90. And so what was nice was she knew the material, she understood the concept, and she got what we were teaching her, but she also knew that one was better than the other. Noor's also participated in our Victim Impact Program. It's a program that any juvenile that comes into the system that has a victim-related crime is usually court-ordered to attend. It's a short 90-minute session and individuals get a chance to learn what crime impact is in their community. And at the end, they are required to write an apology letter to whoever the victim is listed in the police report. And on this one, it was actually Noor's mom that was listed as her victim. And as Noor wrote that apology letter, and she gave it to me, they're given to the probation officers after class, there was little dots of teardrops that were on there. So in my next encounter with Noor, which was just a couple days after she attended this class, I asked her about it, and she said, I had no idea that what I did had such an impact on my mom. And so using these research-informed practice models that we have, they really do have an impact. And she had no idea that her mom would be worried about her. It seems so simple to understand, but when she ran away, she had no idea how much her mom would worry when she was gone. She had no idea how many people are impacted by that because we teach that ripple effect. And it was very, very enlightening for her to be able to understand what that looks like and how that impacted not only her mom, but her entire community. In competency on 5, engage in policy practice. It became a policy of just this year with having heard back from individuals on how powerful that victim impact program is. I mean, when you get a piece of paper with a juvenile's tears on a letter to their mom, that's impactful. And so we made it a new policy that every individual with a victim crime does attend our victim impact program. And it has taken it from maybe 5 or 6 kids a month attending this to we have between 30 and 40 that attend our victim impact program now. And it's been fantastic. And a lot of that was in thanks to Nor and me getting that back from her and having that conversation with my supervisor and bringing it to a divisional meeting and saying, this is huge. We need to be using this more. And how do we use it more? By making it a rule and making it a policy that everybody has to follow. Another policy that was impacted by Nor was interpreters. We are now required to take interpreters out in the field with us, have them at office appointments, and make sure and follow up with the courts to make sure that they are available in a family's court hearing as well. Because it is so crucial, and I have learned with working with this family that if you say, do you understand? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, but they really don't. We also can't depend on juveniles to interpret for us, because as we all know, they're going to say what they want to say and not necessarily what needs to be said. So that was a very big thing for us. Also with Odyssey, which is our brand new electronic filing system through the courts, we have a tremendous amount of policies there. And one of those that we had to change that was directly impacted Nor was when the papers were filed electronically, the court receptionist no longer got a copy of the probation officer report that was prepared for sentencing. And I didn't actually find this out until Nor went in for a sentencing and her report was not available to her. I asked her if she'd had a chance to review it because it's usually something that they do before we get there, and they hadn't had it. So we needed to implement a new policy with Odyssey that not only is it e-filed, but it also has to get sent physically to the courthouse so that the family has a chance to review it. It's a 15 to 19 page document. There's a lot of information in there. Typically, it's all self-reported or information from collateral contacts on each individual. And they're prepared by probation officers, and we're human, and errors get made. So we really wanted to make sure that the family still had access to those. So a policy was derived that also gets sent to them. In competency 6, engage in individuals, family groups, organizations, and communities. Wow. With this family, there's a lot of engaging with a lot of community, a lot of family. Nor was placed at Intermountain twice. So engaging with the family to make sure that they understood. When could they go see her? How long would she be there? What would the treatment look like when she was there? There was a lot of hand-holding and explaining, as well as working with partners, with community mental health, with children's mental health, with community partners, making sure that everybody was on board to do what was in the best interest of this family. But not only that, it kind of explained to them and walked them through, because it was very foreign. Their daughter was being taken away and put into a facility, and they had no idea when she was coming back. Nor spent a lot of time in detention. She violated quite a few times, and because of this, she spent a great deal of her allotted number of days in detention. One of the things that she got to partake in was the family dinner night. And family dinner night is probably one of my favorite things that we have in detention. And it's based off the National Family Dinner Night. And it's where families nationwide are supposed to sit down and have dinner with their family. We try to do it once a month. Sometimes it's once every 2 months, where juveniles that are currently in detention get a chance to invite their families and come have dinner with them. And Nor was there during the time that we actually did this. Knowing that she was there, I had a couple other juveniles in detention at the same time. I took the evening and went and had dinner with them as well. And being able to sit down without a probation jacket on, without all of my equipment that I take with me when I go out to do a home visit, or maybe they're sitting with me in my office, but just to sit down and engage with that family over a meal completely changed the dynamics and the relationship. Mother was much more open when answering my questions. It really built the rapport, and I got to see the family laugh and engage with each other, instead of, in a lot of times the situations I see, it's very hostile, and it's a situation's on fire and we're trying to deal with that at the moment. This was just simply a family having dinner, and I got to be part of that, and that definitely was a game changer as far as how that family continued to interact with me and how that rapport just tripled in that time frame. As you see through the video, there are several pictures that I have included for a lot of the things that we do engage in, which National Night Out is one. There's a picture of the family dinner night. Scales of Justice Bass Tournament was one of my favorite that I got to do. Nora was actually scheduled to do this with me, go on the boat, spend the day out fishing. She actually violated 2 days before and ended up back in detention, so she was unable to participate in that. So competency 7, assess individuals, families, and groups, organizations, and communities. We do a lot of assessments in the Victim Impact Program, which is probably the one that was the biggest one for Nora as far as seeing kind of where she grew. So when she did her Victim Impact Program, we always do a pre-test and a post-test at the end. So what do you understand about how your crime impacts other people? They learn about the crime for the 90 minutes that they're in session. Then they take a post-test at the end. And Nora's was astronomical in how much it went from having absolutely no idea the impact her crime had on herself, her family, and her community, going to, wow, like I now understand what it did. And I think that's kind of where those tears came from when she wrote that apology letter. Nora's also participated in our Girls Circle. We do the same thing as far as a pre and post test with that. It's usually an evidence-based program that we take, and it's a curriculum-based, usually for 6 to 8 weeks, once a week. Girls come, same age group. It wasn't a super good fit for her, and that's kind of another part of the assessment that we did. The interaction, even though she fit the age for the group that was appropriate, I don't think she had the capacity to keep up with the group, or the Americanized way that some of the individuals were interacting in that group and understanding the difference with the sarcasm and things like that. I staffed it with my supervisor after she had attended 3 sessions and just decided that it was actually not going to be working for her. So it was something that we ended up taking her out of. But that is kind of part of assessing our clients as well. Is the program that we have them in something that's actually valuable and beneficial for them? Competency 8, intervene with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. One of the ways that we intervene is we get court-ordered 20-511A staffings. Those are mental health staffings that are typically involved of clinical, probation, parents, sometimes the schools or the school SROs, any detention staff that the juvenile has had encounter with, children's mental health, as well as Department of Juvenile Corrections are all there. And it's basically a meeting of the minds to say, what have we done? And how has that worked? What can we be doing? And what is now our next step? And when that meeting is over, we attempt to address the mental health needs of an individual. Nora has had actually 2 20-511A staffings, and we found that she actually needed to be placed in State Hospital South. So she is currently residing in State Hospital South. She is estimated to be home in about 3 weeks, and we're hoping that addresses the need with one of hers was mental stability with meds. Even though she had them, she had med management, she had counseling set up, she would not take her meds. And she would manipulate and threaten mom verbally as far as, don't make me take my meds because it's not something I want to do. So we found that the best way to get her stabilized was to actually put her in an institution temporarily, just to get her stable on that, and then bring her back into the community and allow her to continue to use community-based programs. And hopefully those will be very beneficial to her. Is another way that we intervene with the families is, like I said before, we never want to put a juvenile's interaction into juvenile justice more than we need to. So as they are assessed using our recidivism tools, we give them a score, and that score tells us how many times we should see them a month, because we don't want to over-supervise them. With Nor, she was a moderate. I would say if she was assessed again, which should happen in another probably 3 months, she may be up to a moderate high, just because of the amount of violations that she's had, and again, now she's in a new commitment. But that tells me how many times I should see her so that I don't over-supervise her. And it's a way of intervening in a way that's healthy for each individual. Competency 9, evaluate practice with individuals and families, groups, and communities. So, like I said, Nora was part of our Girls Circle, and how I evaluated my practice is I would make sure that when we were done with those Girls Circles, I would ask my co-facilitator, how did that come across? Could I have done that better? How would you have approached that? I did this and it didn't feel like it went well. Tell me how that was. I would get that feedback. Also, we let them tell us. At the end, kind of part of their post-test, is we ask them, what did you like best about it? What can we do better? Tell me what you liked about your facilitators and what you didn't like. And this is juvenile probation, so sometimes we got some very colorful responses. I had a chance to talk to Nora about that, even though she didn't finish it, and she said that she really liked it, but it seemed to move really fast for her. It was just a little bit too much for her to understand, which I think was another good determination that it was probably best to take her out of that program. Another way I evaluated my progress with my individuals and families is my weekly journals. I know none of us really wanted to write them, and a lot of them always seemed to be about Nor, because there was something going on weekly with her. So I could go back and look and say, okay, well, back then I was really frustrated and I didn't know what to do, but now when I'm engaging with her, I don't get as frustrated, and I think a lot of that goes back to that education piece. I educated myself as to why she's acting this way. It didn't make sense to me at the time, which caused me to be frustrated. And now that I understand it a little bit more, I can see in my reflection of my journals that the way I approached my interactions with her was much more understanding and much more, what are we going to do to work on this versus why did you do this? And for me, that was a really big growth period as far as learning and comprehending where I've come from and what my practice looks like and how it's perceived. Rule 10 with rural practice, we live in Idaho, and Idaho is a rural state. And so one of the things that I put together is a networking resource list, and it's kind of a condensed version of the 211, and I gave that to Nora and her family because if they needed clothing, they didn't always know where to go. They knew there was a thrift store by their house, but they didn't know that we have several churches that have free clothes. At the detention facility, we have a closet that is completely full of clothes. It's actually an entire office that somebody no longer has. And they can go there at any time that the courthouse is open, and they can get court clothes if they don't have anything that they feel is appropriate to wear to court. They can get school clothes. They can get backpacks, all kinds of things. So we put together a resource list when working with the family. Once I was able to really engage with them and find out what their needs were, we have a list and we just keep adding to it. It's kind of a little notebook that mom has. She has it with her all the time. And anytime I find out about a new resource, I make sure we add it to that because I understand that we may have resources here in Idaho, but they're not always known by everyone. So this was a really good tool for her to have, and she kind of feels like she's putting together her own little book of resources as well. With a rural setting, education is really important. You know, I had to really search where I was going to find continuing education practices on refugees. And I had no idea that it would be the Boise Police Department. And so thankfully, I didn't have to go very far, but in a rural area, we don't have access to as many different types of continuing education or just education opportunities in general. One of the big things that was a real barrier for this family was transportation. Mom didn't drive. They had one vehicle that Dad took to work. Mom didn't know how to drive, even if they were able to obtain another vehicle. And so we had transportation services set up for them, and a lot of times that was a taxi service. Well, if Nor went to school in the morning, but had a counseling appointment at 11, the taxi service would not go pick her up at school and then pick up Mom and then go to the counseling appointment. It was only a one stop, one pickup, and then to the facility. So Nor would have to stay home on those days that she had counseling in order for Mom to be able to go with her, because Mom and Nor had to be together. Mom wouldn't be an additional pickup because she wasn't technically on the transportation ticket. So Nor had to be there. So we really worked hard to get this situated. Thankfully, CBRS came in with the facility that we used, is able to transport with them, and we schedule those appointments and those things on times that they can be together. But it's a real barrier for them because sometimes they need to go in an area that doesn't have public transportation, and being able to afford a taxi or something like that on their own was very difficult. So that covers all of my competencies for my capstone project. I think, to recap, for me, what I've learned is I'm never going to stop learning. Even when I think I know my job, I'm going to get a client like Nor that completely wipes clean everything that I think I know about things, or things that I've never even thought I needed to know about, and I need to continue to be that forever student. I think once I stop doing that, I stop using best practices for my clients, and I stop giving them what they need as far as the best service that I could offer them. So that's the one thing that I really gained from my capstone project, was to continue to grow even beyond school and be who my clients deserve. Somebody that really, really is wanting to understand them. And the only way to do that sometimes is to go above and beyond and really research and find out who they are. And in turn, it makes us find out who we are. So I appreciate the opportunity.